Hello, welcome to Emerald Lake. I'll be reading stories again today. Pick up from where I was last night. Good to see you, Death Noah, in the chat. And hopefully others join us soon. I'm just going to make sure, there's a couple of settings I forgot to fix. Okay. The first story is The Valiant Little Tailor. One fine day, a tailor was sitting on his bench by the window in very high spirits, sewing away most diligently, and presently up the street came a countrywoman, crying, "Good jams for sale, good jams for sale." This cry sounded nice in the tailor's ears, and, poking his diminutive head out of the window, he called, "Here, my good woman, just bring your jams in here." The woman mounted the 3 steps up to the tailor's house with her large basket, and began to open all the pots together before him. He looked at them all, held them up to the light, smelt them, and at last said, "These jams seem to me to be very nice, so you may weigh me out 2 ounces, my good woman. I don't object even, if you make it a 1/4 pound." The woman, who hoped to have met with a good customer, gave him all he wished, and went off grumbling and in a very bad temper. "Now," exclaimed the tailor, "Heaven will send me a blessing on this jam, and give me fresh strength and vigor." And taking the bread from the cupboard, he cut himself a slice the size of the whole loaf, and spread the jam upon it. "That will taste very nice," said he, "but before I take a bite, I will just finish this waistcoat." So he put the bread on the table and stitched away, making larger and larger stitches every time for joy. Meanwhile the smell of the jam rose to the ceiling, where many flies were sitting, and enticed them down, so that soon a great swarm of them had pitched on the bread. "Holla! Who asked you?" exclaimed the tailor, driving away the uninvited visitors. But the flies, not understanding his words, would not be driven off, and came back in greater numbers than before. This put the little man in a great passion, and snatched up in his anger a bag of cloth. He brought it down with a merciless swoop upon them. Then he raised it again and counted as many as 7 lying dead before him with outstretched legs. "What a fellow you are," said he to himself, astonished at his own bravery. "The whole town must hear of this." In great haste he cut himself out a band, hemmed it, and then put on it in large letters, 7 at one blow. "Ah," said he, "not one city alone, the world shall hear it," and his heart danced with joy like a puppy dog's tail. The little tailor bound the belt around his body and made ready to travel forth into the wide world, feeling the bookshop was too small for his great deeds. Before he set out, however, he looked about his house to see if there was anything he could carry with him, but he found only an old cheese, which he pocketed, and observing a bird which was caught in the bushes before the door, he captured it, and put that in his pocket also. Soon after he set out boldly on his travels, and, as he was light and active, he felt no fatigue. His road led him up a hill, and when he arrived at the highest point of it, he found a great giant sitting there, who was gazing about him very composedly. But the little tailor went boldly up and said, "Good day, friend. Truly you sit there and see the whole world stretched below you. I also am on my way thither to seek my fortune. Are you willing to go with me?" The giant looked with scorn at the little tailor and said, "You rascal, you wretched creature." "Perhaps so," replied the tailor, "but here may be seen what sort of a man I am." And, unbuttoning his coat, he showed the giant his belt. The giant read 7 at one blow, and supposing they were men whom the tailor had killed, he felt some respect for him. Still, he meant to try him first, so taking up a pebble, he squeezed it so hard that water dropped out of it. "Do as well as that," said he to the other, "if you have the strength." "If it be nothing harder than that," said the tailor, "that's child's play." And, diving into his pocket, he pulled out the cheese and squeezed it till the whey ran out of it. "Now, I fancied that I have done better than you." The giant wondered what to say, and could not believe it of the little man, so, catching up another pebble, he flung it so high that it almost went out of sight, saying, "There, you pygmy, do what you can." "Well done," said the tailor, "but if your pebble will fall down again to the ground, I will throw one up which will not come down." And dipping into his pocket, he took out the bird and threw it into the air. The bird, glad to be free, flew straight up and then far away and did not come back. "How does that little performance please you, friend?" asked the tailor. "You can throw well," replied the giant. "Now truly we will see if you are able to carry something uncommon." So saying, he took him to a large oak tree, which lay upon the ground, and said, "If you are strong enough, now help me to carry this tree out of the forest." "With pleasure," replied the tailor. "You may hold the trunk upon your shoulder, and I will lift the boughs and branches. They are the heaviest, and carry them." The giant took the trunk upon his shoulder, but the tailor sat down on one of the branches, and the giant, who could not look around, was compelled to carry the whole tree and the tailor also. He, being behind, was very cheerful, and laughed at the trick, and presently began to sing the song, "There rode 3 tailors out at the gate, as if the carrying of trees were a trifle." The giant, after he had staggered a very short distance with his heavy load, could go no further, and called out, "Do you hear? I must drop the tree." The tailor, jumping down, quickly embraced the tree with both arms as if he had been carrying it, and said to the giant, "Are you such a big fellow, and yet cannot you carry a tree by yourself?" Then they travelled on further, and as they came to a cherry tree, the giant seized up the top of the tree where the ripest cherries hung, and bending it down, gave it to the tailor to hold, telling him to eat. But the tailor was far too weak to hold the tree down, and when the giant let go, the tree flew up in the air, and the tailor was taken with it. He came down on the other side, however, unhurt, and the giant said, "What does that mean? Are you not strong enough to hold that twig?" "My strength does not fail me," said the tailor. "Do you imagine that that was a hard task for one who has slain 7 in one blow? I sprang over the tree simply because the hunters were shooting down here in the thicket. Jump after me if you can." The giant made the attempt, but could not clear the tree, and stuck fast in the branches, so that in this affair too, the tailor had the advantage. Then the giant said, "Since you are such a brave fellow, come with me to my house and stop a night with me." The tailor agreed and followed him. When they came to the cave, there sat by the fire 2 other giants, each with a roast sheep in his hand, of which he was eating. The tailor sat down thinking, "Ah, this is very much more like the world than is my workshop." And soon the giant pointed out a bed where he could lie down and go to sleep. The bed, however, was too large for him, so he crept out of it and lay down in a corner. When midnight came, and the giant fancied the tailor would be in sound sleep, he got up, and taking a heavy iron bar, beat the bed right through at one stroke, and believed he had thereby given the tailor his death blow. At the dawn of the day the giants went out into the forest, quite forgetting the tailor, when presently up he came, quite cheerful, and showed himself before them. The giants were frightened, and dreading he might kill them all, they ran away in a great hurry. The tailor travelled on, always following his nose, and after he had journeyed some long distance, he came into the courtyard of a royal palace, and feeling very tired, he laid himself down on the ground and went to sleep. Whilst he lay there, the people came out and viewed him on all sides, and read upon his belt, 7 at one blow. "Ah," they said, "what does this great warrior here in time of peace? This must be some valiant hero." So they went and told the king, knowing that, should war break out, here was a valuable and useful man, whom one ought not to part with at any price. The king took advice and sent one of his courtiers to the tailor to beg for his fighting services, if he should be awake. The messenger stopped at the sleeper's side and waited till he stretched out his limbs and unclosed his eyes, and then he mentioned to him his message. "Solely for that reason did I come here," was his answer. "I am quite willing to enter into the king's service." Then he was taken away with great honor, and a fine house was appointed to him to dwell in. The courtiers, however, became jealous of the tailor, and wished him at the other end of the world. "What will happen," said they to one another, "if we go to war with him? When he strikes out, 7 will fall at one stroke, and nothing will be left for us to do." In their anger, they came to the determination to resign, and they went all together to the king, and asked his permission, saying, "We are not prepared to keep company with a man who kills 7 at one blow." The king was sorry to lose all his devoted servants for the sake of one, and wished that he had never seen the tailor, and would gladly have now been rid of him. He dared not, however, dismiss him, because he feared the tailor might kill him and all his subjects, and seat himself upon the throne. For a long time he deliberated, till finally he came to a decision, and, sending for the tailor, he told him that, seeing he was so great a hero, he wished to beg a favor of him. "In a certain forest in my kingdom," said the king, "there are 2 giants who, by murder, rapine, fire, and robbery, have committed great damage, and no one approaches them without endangering his own life. If you overcome and slay both these giants, I will give you my only daughter in marriage, and half of my kingdom for a dowry. 100 knights shall accompany you, too, in order to render you assistance." "Ah, that is something for a man like me," thought the tailor to himself. "A lovely princess and half a kingdom are not offered to one every day." "Oh yes," he replied, "I will soon settle these 2 giants, and 100 horsemen are not needed for that purpose. He who kills 7 at one blow has no fear of 2. Speaking thus, the little tailor set out, followed by the 100 knights, to whom he said immediately they came to the edge of the forest, "You must stay here. I prefer to meet these giants alone." Some of this old grammar is confusing. He said to them as soon as they met the edge of the forest, "You stay here." Then he ran off into the forest, peering about him on all sides, and after a while he saw the 2 giants sound asleep under a tree, snoring so loudly that the branches above them shook violently. The tailor, bold as a lion, filled both his pockets with stones and climbed up the tree. When he got to the middle of it, he crawled along a bough, so that he sat just above the sleepers, and then he let fall one stone after another upon the body of one of them. For some time the giant did not move, until at last, awaking, he pushed his companion and said, "Why are you hitting me?" You have been dreaming, he answered. I did not touch you. So they laid themselves down again to sleep, and presently the tailor threw a stone down upon the other. What is that? He cried. Why are you knocking me about? I did not touch you. You are dreaming, said the first. So they argued for a few minutes, but, both being very weary with the day's work, they soon went to sleep again. Then the tailor began his fun again, and picking out the largest stone, threw it with all his strength upon the chest of the first giant. This is too bad, he exclaimed, and jumping up like a madman, he fell upon his companion, who considered himself equally injured, and they set to in such good earnest that they rooted up trees and beat one another about until they both fell dead on the ground. Then that I can't seem to shake this. Then the tailor jumped down, saying, What a piece of luck they did not pull up the tree on which I sat, or else I must have jumped on another like a squirrel, for I am not used to flying. Then he drew his sword, and cutting a deep wound in the breast of both, he went to the horsemen and said, The deed is done. I have given each his death stroke, but it was a tough job, for in their defense they uprooted trees to protect themselves with. Still, all that is of no use when such a one as I come, who slew 7 at one stroke. And are you not wounded? They asked. How can you ask me that? They have not injured a hair on my head, replied the little man. The knights could hardly believe him, till, riding into the forest, they found the giants laying dead and uprooted trees around them. Then the tailor demanded the promised reward of the king, but he repented of his promise, and began to think of some new plan to shake off the hero. Before you receive my daughter and half of my kingdom, he said to him, you must execute another brave deed. In the forest there lives a unicorn that commits great damage. You must first catch him. I fear a unicorn less than I did 2 giants. 7 at one blow is my motto, said the tailor. So he carried with him a rope and an axe, and went off to the forest, ordering those who were told to accompany him to wait on the outskirts. He had not... I'll be back in a bit. Alright, I have no idea what that was, and they were not there when I looked. Spooky. Few people are usually visiting. It's not very common to find me, so, odd. No, nothing. There was nothing. Which is interesting for such an aggressive knock. Maybe we should skip to the scary stories. But I'll continue reading the Valiant Little Tailor for now. Entirely, Death Noah. Exactly what I'm feeling. Okay. He fears a unicorn less, right? Alright, and he said for his company to wait on the outskirts. Alright, yes. Be at the ready. He had not to hunt for long, for soon the unicorn approached, and prepared to rush at him as if it would pierce him on the spot. Steady, steady, he exclaimed. That is not done so easily. And waiting till the animal was close upon him, he sprang nimbly behind a tree. The unicorn, rushing with all its force against the tree, stuck its horn so fast in the trunk that it could not pull it out again, and so it remained prisoner. Now I have got him, said the tailor, and coming from behind the tree, he first bound the rope around its neck, and then, cutting the horn out of the tree with his axe, he arranged everything, and, leading the unicorn, brought it before the king. The king, however, would not yet deliver over the promised reward, and made a third demand, that before marriage, the tailor should capture a wild boar, which did not much damage, and he should have the huntsman to help him. With pleasure, was the reply. It is a mere nothing. The huntsman, however, he left behind to their great joy, for this wild boar had already so often hunted them that they saw no fun in now hunting it. As soon as the boar perceived the tailor, it ran at him with gaping mouth and glistening teeth, and tried to throw him down on the ground. But our flying hero sprang into a little chapel which stood near, and out again at a window on the other side. In a moment the boar ran after him, but he, skipping around, closed the door behind it, and there the furious beast was caught, for it was much too unwieldy and heavy to jump out the window. The tailor now ordered the huntsmen up, that they might see his prisoner with their own eyes. But our hero presented himself before the king, who was obliged at last, whether he would not or no, to keep his word and surrender his daughter and half of his kingdom. If he had known that it was no warrior, but only a tailor who stood before him, it would have grieved him still more. So the wedding was celebrated with great magnificence, though with little rejoicing, and out of a tailor there was made a king. A short time afterwards the young queen heard her husband talking in his sleep, saying, Boy, make me a coat, and then stitch up these trousers, or I will lay the yard measure over your shoulders. Then she understood of what condition her husband was, and complained in the morning to her father, and begged he would free her from her husband, who was nothing more than a tailor. The king comforted her by saying, This night leave your chamber door open. My servants shall stand outside, and when he is asleep they shall come in, bind him, and carry him away to a ship, which shall take him out into the wide world. The wife was pleased with this proposal, but the king's armor-bearer, who had overheard it all, went to the young king and revealed the whole plot. I will soon put an end to this affair, said the valiant little tailor. In the evening, at their usual time, they went to bed, and when his wife thought he was asleep, she got up, opened the door, and laid herself down again. The tailor, however, only pretended to be asleep, and began to call out in a loud voice, Boy, make me a coat, and then stitch up these trousers, or I will lay the yard measure about your shoulders. 7 have I slain with one blow, 2 giants have I killed, a unicorn have I led captive, and a wild boar have I caught, and I shall be afraid of those who stand outside my room? When the men heard these words spoken by the tailor, a great fear came over them, and they ran away as if wild huntsmen were following them. Neither afterwards dared any man venture to oppose him. Thus the tailor became a king, and so he lived for the rest of his life. And there you have the Valiant Little Tailor. A very sweet little story for the little tailor man, but so many of these things, it's such a big leap. Oh, I've killed 7 flies. I should go tell people, and then, yeah, I can take on giants. What? Okay. Thank you for the follow. I am not sure how to say that name. I'm very close to my goal now, to 50. That's been growing very quickly. I'm very happy with that. The next story I think we'll be doing is Rumpelstiltskin, which is quite short. 2 more. Yes, only 2 more for that goal. I'm very excited. Still a long way to grow, but I get excited about all the little achievements still. It's fun that I still change the goal very regularly because I'm getting it. I'm amazed. If there's trigger requests, this is the time. With no requests, I'll just go in with the first things I see. Oh, I'll do page ruffling next. I just got this set up, but I'll do page ruffling next. Alright. Page ruffling. And I'll start with my small book, and then I'll go to the big book. I haven't pulled out the big book yet. bigger book might be quieter. It has softer pages. Alright, I will start up the next story then. I think that's a good way to go with the lurking. Alright. Now we'll be reading Rumpelstiltskin. By the side of the wood, in a country a long way off, ran a fine stream of water, and upon the stream there stood a mill. The miller's house was close by, and the miller, you must know, had a very beautiful daughter. She was, moreover, very shrewd and clever, and the miller was so proud of her that he one day told the king of the land, who used to come and hunt in the wood, that his daughter could spin gold out of straw. Now this king was very fond of money, and when he heard the miller's boast, his greediness was raised. When he heard the miller's boast, his greediness was raised, and he sent for the girl to be brought before him. Then he led her to a chamber in his palace, where there was a great heap of straw, and gave her a spinning wheel, and said, "All this must be spun into gold before morning, as you love your life." It was in vain that the poor maiden said that it was only a silly boast of her father, for that she could do no such thing as spin straw into gold. The chamber door was still locked, and she was left alone. She sat down in one corner of the room, and began to bewail her hard fate, when, on a sudden, the door opened, and a droll-looking little man hobbled in and said, "Good morrow to you, my good lass. What are you weeping for?" "Alas," said she, "I must spin this straw into gold, and I know not how." "What will you give me," said the hobgoblin, "to do it for you?" "My necklace," replied the maiden. He took her at her word, and sat himself down to the wheel, and whistled and sang, round about, lo and behold, reel away, straw into gold." And round about the wheel went merrily. The work was quickly done, and the straw was all spun into gold. When the king came and saw this, he was greatly astonished and pleased. His heart grew still more greedy of gain, and he shut up the door the poor miller's daughter again with a fresh task. He shut up the poor miller's daughter again with a fresh task. Then she knew not what to do, and sat down once more to weep. But the dwarf soon opened the door, and said, "What will you give me to do your task?" "The ring on my finger," said she. So her little friend took the ring and began to work at the wheel again, and whistled and sang, round about, lo and behold, reel away, straw into gold, till long before morning all was done again. The king was greatly delighted to see all his glittering treasure, but still he had none enough, so he took the miller's daughter into yet a larger heap, and said, "All this must be spun tonight, and if it is, you shall be my queen." As soon as she was alone, that dwarf came in and said, "What will you give me to spin gold for you this third time?" "I have nothing left," said she. "Then say you will give me," said the little man, "the first child that you may have when you are queen." "That may never be," thought the miller's daughter, and as she knew no other way to get her task done, she said she would do what he asked. Round went the wheel again to the old song, and the mannikin once more spun the heap into gold. The king came in the morning, and finding all he wanted, was forced to keep his word, so he married the miller's daughter, and she really became queen. At the birth of her first child, she was very glad, and forgot the dwarf and what she had said. But one day he came into her room, where she was sitting playing with her baby, and put her in mind of it. Then she grieved sorely at her misfortune, and said she would give him all the wealth of the kingdom if he would let her off, but in vain, till at last her tears softened him, and he said, "I will give you 3 days' grace, and if during that time you tell me my name, you shall keep your child." Now the queen lay awake all night, thinking of all the odd names she had ever heard, and she sent messengers all over the land to find out new ones. The next day the little man came, and she began with Timothy, Ichabod, Benjamin, Jeremiah, and all the names she could remember. But to all and each of them he said, "Madam, that is not my name." The second day she began with all the comical names she could hear of, Bandy-legs, Hunchback, Crookshanks, and so on. But the little gentleman still said to every one of them, "Madam, that is not my name." The third day one of the messengers came back and said, "I have traveled 2 days without hearing of any other names, but yesterday, as I was climbing a high hill, among the trees of the forest, where the fox and the hare bid each other good night, I saw a little hut, and before the hut burnt a fire, and around about the fire a funny little dwarf was dancing upon one leg and singing, 'Merrily the feast I'll make, today I'll brew, tomorrow bake. Merrily I'll dance and sing, for next day will a stranger bring. Little does my lady dream, Rumpelstiltskin is my name.'" When the queen heard this, she jumped for joy, and soon as her little friend came, she sat down upon her throne and called all her court round to enjoy the fun. And the nurse stood by her side with the baby in her arms, as if it was quite ready to be given up. Then the little man began to chuckle at the thought of having the poor child to take home with him to put in his hut in the woods, and he cried out, "Now, lady, what is my name?" "Is it John?" asked she. "No, ma'am. No, madam, sorry." "Is it Tom?" "No, madam." "Is it Jemmy?" "It is not." "Can your name be Rumpelstiltskin?" said the lady slyly. "Some witch told you that. Some witch told you that," cried the little man, and dashed his foot in a rage so deep into the floor that he was forced to lay hold of it with both hands to pull it out. Then he made the best of his way off, while the nurse laughed and the baby crowed, and all the court jeered at him for having had so much trouble for nothing, and said, "We wish you a very good morning and a merry feast, Mr. Rumpelstiltskin." And that is all there is to Rumpelstiltskin. Since I imagine that Death Noah would be the only one to put anything in the chat, but they are busy, I will just jump in to some humming. Humming, not hummong. Oh, hello, wild dragon. Were you watching while asleep previously? That's wonderful, actually. If you have trigger requests, pop them in. I'm going to hum for a bit. And I've said before, but no one's done it yet, if you want to have the same trigger to last longer, just request it again. Give specifics. I'm still learning everything. So if you want to tell me to do something differently as well, tell me and I'll try. Yes, Jabberwocky is one that I will probably get around to. I didn't realize how many stories were housed on the website I found, and so the first page is running out and it's all short stories for the rest of probably this stream, but they've got a lot more. I think I will have to figure out different, different categorized readings once I actually know what they are better. And if it's a long story, I could say, we're reading as much as I can of this one tonight, and that's all we're reading. But I'm liking that this is a mixed bag with these fairy tales. I'll have to change the names of streams and things and properly label them. But Jabberwocky is a very good recommendation, so I will note it. And I'll do another hum, and then any other triggers, I'll probably do brushing after this if no one requests anything. Ooh, Skyrim reading. Yeah, I like my fairy tales and folk tales for now, but I'll write that one down too. Whatever people will look for, I will do it. If you think that people would want to tune in specifically for that, then I do it. If people aren't picky, then I'll go with entertains me, but sometimes I wonder if I should be not reacting at all to the stories. I've been putting in little moments whenever the stories properly shock me, because they have done that a few times now, where I speak up. Sometimes I feel like, oh, is that wrong to do? Should I be focusing or not? And I think I've got a YouTube channel that I haven't started posting on, but I'll be putting up the old streams up there so that they don't disappear. And I'm thinking of reading some stories there where it's very straightforward. There's no interruptions. So if people wanted just that, then that's the way that can be. But certainly for streams right now, interrupting and having a dialogue is fun for me for now. But thank you very much for the recommendations for Jabberwocky and Skyrim Wiki. I think Jabberwocky I'll definitely do, and Skyrim I'll do if I float it and other people want to hear that. I'll do that. Thank you. I'll do a little bit of brushing, then we'll move on to the next story. It's another one of the short little stories that we've got. Unless we have another trigger request. I'll stay away from or stay exclusive to stories or triggers if requested. I'm just still trying to figure out what people like. So tell me, and I'll learn and I'll do as requested. Ah, thank you. Is that a little dragon? What is that? It's very cute though. Alright, brushings. Yay, I like that he's a little dragon. I need to make friends with that little dragon and then little scarf. I love him. He is great. Hello, Violet. Hello, Scratch Fury. I'm sorry that I've given you an earworm, but it's my favorite earworm. So, suffer. I don't know. Ah! Those are great. You are great. That is great emotes. I want them all. I need to figure out emotes eventually. They are very entertaining to me. But I especially love a little leafy dragon. Yeah, very cute dragon. Alright. We just read Rumpelstiltskin. The next story will be The Emperor's New Clothes. And then we still got quite a few more, but yeah. Yes, I think I will be soon. The achievements are looking good. So I think I might be soon, and then I will have emotes. Yay. Yay. Alright. What was I saying? The Emperor's New Clothes. We all know this one. People will be naked. Oh boy. Alright. That's where that was it. The Emperor's New Clothes. Yes, well, be glad you weren't here for it. Oh gosh, what was the name of it exactly? It was The Naughty Boy. It was a story about Cupid, but it read very strangely at the start. Yes, alright, The Emperor's New Clothes. Brace yourself, Wild Dragon, I know. Many years ago, there was an emperor who was so excessively fond of new clothes that he spent all his money in dress. He did not trouble himself in the least about his soldiers, nor did he care to go either to the theatre or the chase, except for the opportunities then afforded him for displaying his new clothes. He had a different suit for each hour of the day, and as of any other king or emperor, one is accustomed to say, he is sitting in council. It was always of him, the emperor is sitting in his wardrobe. Oh, I shouldn't read them? I would love to read those. I'm going to be going through a lot more tales. I know I will. I will get to the Greek and Roman. Good. I'm excited, Violet. Honestly, I'm ready. It will open up all new avenues. Yes, because you don't know Eurydice. Is that it? Anyway, distraction. I was just arguing, well, not arguing, considering arguing with myself in my head. Eurydice. Oh no. Well, now I have to say it, but I won't be as quiet as I am usually. Eurydice. I think that's lovely. I think it's great. Alright. No. Yeah. I'm sure that stream, that existence, that moment was worth silent laughing and crying over. It's one of those things I can just see everyone giggling about and not knowing what they're doing, as if the air was poisoned with laughing gas or something. Those moments are always so great. But alright, the Emperor, his obsession with clothing, yes. Time passed merrily in the large town, which was his capital. Strangers arrived every day at the court. One day, 2 rogues, calling themselves weavers, made their appearance. They gave out that they knew how to weave stuffs of the most beautiful colors and elaborate patterns, the clothes manufactured from which should have the wonderful property of remaining invisible to everyone who was unfit for the office he held, or who was extraordinarily simple in character. The Emperor's New Clothes? Yeah, I remember a few different versions of this story, all very old. I'm not sure the version that will come across here. Most of these stories I know, the ones that I know, most of the ones I know cleaner children's versions, and then the first few I read on stream, they're classic and people have talked about, oh, and the old one, did you hear about how it's actually really, really scary, or has a very dark twist? And I was surprised that some of them did not take did not take those dark twists. But the ones that I had never heard of, the goose girl, the naughty boy, the story of the youth who went forth to learn of what fear was, Bluebeard, all these other ones, I had no idea what they were. And about half of the time, they also go weirdly dark or somehow skip over what ought to be dark. Very intriguing. So the clothes would be invisible to the people who are not fit for the office of whoever was wearing it. So, that's why. These must indeed be splendid clothes, thought the emperor. Had I such a wit, I might at once find out what men in my realms are unfit for their office. Oh, if you're unfit for the office you are currently holding, it will be invisible. Not unfit for the office. Anyway. I will find out who is unfit for their office, and also be able to distinguish the wise from the foolish. This stuff must be woven for me immediately. And he caused large sums of money to be given to both the weavers in order that they might begin their work directly. So the two pretended weavers set up 2 looms and affected to work very busily, though in reality they did nothing at all. They asked for the most delicate silk and the purest gold thread, put both into their own knapsacks, and then continued their pretended work at the empty looms until late at night. I should like to know how the weavers are getting on with my cloth, said the emperor to himself. After some little time had elapsed, he was, however, rather embarrassed when he remembered that a simpleton, or one unfit for his office, would be unable to see the manufacture. To be sure, he thought he had nothing to risk in his own person, but yet he would prefer sending somebody else to bring him intelligence about the weavers and their work, before he troubled himself in the affair. All the people throughout the city had heard of the wonderful property the cloth was to possess, and all were anxious to learn how wise or how ignorant their neighbors might prove to be. I will send my faithful old minister to the weavers, said the emperor at last, after some deliberation. He will be best able to see how the cloth looks, for he is a man of sense, and no one can be more suitable for his office than he is. So the faithful old minister went into the hall, where the knaves were working with all their might at their empty looms. What can be the meaning of this? Thought the old man, opening his eyes wide. I cannot discover the least bit of thread on the looms. However, he did not express his thoughts aloud. The impostors requested him very courteously to be so good as to come nearer their looms, and then asked him whether the design pleased him, and whether the colors were not very beautiful, at the same time pointing to the empty frames. The poor old minister looked and looked. He could not discover anything on the looms, for a very good reason. There was nothing there. What? Thought he again. Is it possible that I am a simpleton? I have never thought so of myself, and no one must know it now if I am so. Can it be that I am unfit for my office? No, that must not be said either. I will never confess that I could not see the stuff. Well, minister, said one of the knaves, still pretending to work, you do not say whether the stuff pleases you. Oh, it is excellent, replied the old minister, looking at the loom through his spectacles. This pattern and the colors, yes, I will tell the emperor without delay how very beautiful I think them. We shall be much obliged to you, said the impostors, and then they named the different colors and described the pattern of the pretended stuff. The old minister listened attentively to their words in order that he might repeat them to the emperor, and then the knaves asked for more silk and gold, saying it was necessary to complete what they had begun. However, they put all that was given them into their knapsacks and continued to work with as much apparent diligence as before at their empty looms. The emperor now set another officer of his court to see how the men were getting on, and to ascertain whether the cloth would soon be ready. It was just the same with this gentleman as was the minister. He surveyed the looms on all sides, but could see nothing at all but the empty frames. "Does not the stuff appear as beautiful to you as it did to my lord the minister?" asked the impostors of the emperor's second ambassador, at the same time making the same gestures as before, and talking of the design and colors which were not there. "I am certainly not stupid," thought the minister. "It must be that I am not fit for my good, profitable office. That is very odd. However, no one shall know anything about it." And accordingly he praised the stuff he could not see, and declared that he was delighted with both colors and patterns. "Indeed, please your imperial majesty," said he to his sovereign when he returned, "the cloth which the weavers are preparing is extraordinarily magnificent." The whole city was talking of the splendid cloth which the emperor had ordered to be woven at his own expense, and now the emperor himself wished to see the costly manufacture while it was still in the loom. Accompanied by a select number of officers of the court, among whom were the 2 honest men who had already admired the cloth, he went to the crafty impostors, who, as soon as they were aware of the emperor's approach, went on working more diligently than ever, although they still did not pass a single thread through the looms. "Is not the work absolutely magnificent?" said the 2 officers of the crown already mentioned. "If your majesty will only be pleased to look at it, what a splendid design, what glorious colors!" And at the same time they pointed to the empty frames, for they imagined that everyone else could see this exquisite piece of workmanship. "How is this?" said the emperor to himself. "I can see nothing. This is indeed a terrible affair. Am I a simpleton, or am I unfit to be an emperor? That would be the worst thing that could happen. Oh, the cloth is charming," said he aloud. "It has my complete approbation." And he smiled most graciously and looked closely at the empty looms, for on no account would he say that he could not see what 2 of the officers of his court had praised so much. All his retinue now strained their eyes, hoping to discover something on the looms, but they could see no more than the others. Nevertheless, they all exclaimed, "Oh, how beautiful!" and advised his majesty to have some new clothes made from this special material for the approaching procession. "Magnificent, charming, excellent," resounded on all sides, and everyone was uncommonly gay. The emperor shared in the general satisfaction, and presented the impostors with the riband of an order of knighthood, to be worn in their buttonholes, and the title of gentlemen weavers. The rogues sat up the whole of the night before the day on which the procession was to take place, and had 16 lights burning so that everyone might see how anxious they were to finish the emperor's new suit. They pretended to roll the cloth of the looms, cut the air with their scissors, and sewed with needles without any thread in them. "See," cried they at last, "the emperor's new clothes are ready." And now the emperor, with all the grandees of his court, came to the weavers, and the rogues raised their arms as if in the act of holding something up, saying, "Here are your majesty's trousers, here is the scarf, here is the mantle. The whole suit is as light as a cobweb. One might fancy one has nothing at all on when dressed in it. That, however, is the great virtue of this delicate cloth." "Yes, indeed," said all the courtiers, although not one of them could see anything of this exquisite manufacture. "If your imperial majesty will be graciously pleased to take off your clothes, we will fit on the new suit in front of the looking-glass." The emperor was accordingly undressed, and the rogues pretended to array him in this new suit, the emperor turning round from side to side before the looking-glass. How splendid His Majesty looks in the new clothes, and how well they fit, everyone cried out. What a design! What colors! These are indeed royal robes. The canopy which is to be borne over your Majesty in the procession is waiting, announced the chief master of the ceremonies. I am quite ready, answered the Emperor. Do my new clothes fit well? Asked he, turning round again before the looking-glass, in order that he might appear to be examining his handsome suit. The lords of the bedchamber, who were to carry His Majesty's train, felt about on the ground as if they were lifting up the ends of the mantle, pretending to be carrying something, for they would by no means betray anything like simplicity or unfitness for their office. So now the Emperor walked under his high canopy in the midst of the procession, who through the streets of his capital, and all the people standing by, and all those at the windows cried out, "Oh, how beautiful are our Emperor's new clothes! What a magnificent train there is to the mantle, and how gracefully the scarf hangs!" In short, no one would allow that he could not see these much admired clothes, because in doing so he would have declared himself either a simpleton or unfit for his office. Certainly none of the Emperor's various suits had ever made so great an impression as these invisible ones. But the Emperor has nothing at all on, said a little child. Listen to the voice of innocence, exclaimed the father, and what the child had said was whispered from one to another. But he has nothing at all on, at last cried out all the people. The Emperor was vexed, for he knew that the people were right, but he thought the procession must go on now, and the lords of the bedchamber took greater pains than ever to appear holding up a train, although in reality there was no train to hold. Well, that was the Emperor's new clothes. There we go. They were very quick to believe the child, and then everybody but the lords of the bedchamber, everyone but them, was like, "Oh, yeah, you right. That was bullshit." Those poor guys that were holding the train, they were like, poor dudes. Well, put in your trigger requests or the next story. I can do Jack and a Beanstalk or the Elves and the Shoemaker. And I have heard of the Elves and the Shoemaker. I don't remember much of it, but I have heard of that one. And of course, Jack and the Beanstalk as well. Mouth pops. Okay. Coming right up. Thank you for the request, Death Noah. Thank you for the emotes. I also wanted to say, and I didn't yet, wild dragon, those dolphins are very cute as well. Thank you. any other trigger requests? I can always do repeats as well. Sorry. Alright. I got a new pair of scissors, and I'd like to hear your opinions on which one is better. I will snip the first ones, and then the second ones, and then tell you which is new and which is old. But you who have been watching before will probably be able to tell. Okay. Pair 1. Pair 2. It's quite clear which is better. But I think there is something causing the difference. Maybe if we do that. Oh. It's not really the snip noise, it's just that little clack. Disappointing. Oh no, I don't know how to put it back. Okay, I'll do that another time. More scissor snips. The good scissor snips. Snizzer. Okay. Alright. Any other requests? If nothing, I will ask for somebody to pick which story. It would be the Elves and the Shoemaker or Jack and the Beanstalk. Alright. Give you a moment. Alright. Nobody has decided anything. I will do keys and then story. No. That's not doing keys. Noah, you're blowing a raspberry at me? What? What? Next story. The Elves and the Shoemaker. There. Of course, it runs away off the screen. Alright. The Elves and the Shoemaker. It's quite short. We won't be here long. So drop in your trigger requests and I'll do those as soon as this is done. There was once a shoemaker who worked very hard and was very honest, but still he could not earn enough to live upon, and at last all he had in the world was gone, save just leather enough to make one pair of shoes. Then he cut his leather out, all ready to make up the next day, meaning to rise early in the morning to his work. His conscience was clear, and his heart light amidst all his troubles. So he went peacefully to bed, left all his cares to heaven, and soon fell asleep. In the morning, after he had said his prayers, he sat himself down to his work, when, to his great wonder, there stood the shoes already made upon the table. The good man knew not what to say or think at such an odd thing happening. He looked at the workmanship. There was not one false stitch in the whole job. All was so neat and true that it was quite a masterpiece. The same day a customer came in, and the shoes suited him so well that he willingly paid a price higher than usual for them, and the poor shoemaker, with the money, bought leather enough to make 2 pairs more. In the evening he cut out the work and went to bed early, that he might get up and begin betimes next day. But he was saved all the trouble, for when he got up in the morning, the work was done ready to his hand. Soon in came the buyers, who paid him handsomely for his goods, so that he bought leather enough for 4 pair more. He cut out the work again overnight, and found it done in the morning as before, and so it went on for some time. What was got ready in the evening was always done by daybreak, and the good man soon became thriving and well off again. One evening, about Christmas time, as he and his wife were sitting over the fire chatting together, he said to her, "I should like to sit up and watch tonight, that we may see who it is that comes and does my work for me." The wife liked the thought, so they left a light burning and hid themselves in a corner of the room, behind a curtain that was hung up there, and watched what would happen. As soon as it was midnight, there came in 2 little naked dwarfs, and they sat themselves upon the shoemaker's bench, took up all the work that was cut out, and began to ply with their little fingers, stitching and rapping and tapping away at such a rate that the shoemaker was all wonder and could not take his eyes off them. And on they went, till the job was quite done, and the shoes stood ready for use upon the table. This was long before daybreak, and then they bustled away as quick as lightning. The next day the wife said to the shoemaker, "These little wights have made us rich, and we ought to be thankful to them, and do them a good turn if we can. I am quite sorry to see them run about as they do, and indeed it is not very decent, for they have nothing upon their backs to keep off the cold. I'll tell you what, I will make each of them a shirt, and a coat, and a waistcoat, and a pair of pantaloons into the bargain, and do you make each of them a little pair of shoes." The thought pleased the good cobbler very much, and one evening, when all the things were ready, They laid them on the table instead of the work that they used to cut out, and then went and hid themselves to watch the little elves would do. About midnight in they came, dancing and skipping, hopped around the room, and then went to sit down to their work as usual. When they saw the clothes lying for them, they laughed and chuckled and seemed mightily delighted. Then they dressed themselves in the twinkling of an eye, and danced and capered and sprang about as merry as could be, till at last they danced out the door and away over the green. The good couple saw them no more, but everything went well with them from that time forward, as long as they lived. And that is the Elves and the Shoemaker. That's cute, that they just got paid and then they left. Like, okay, well, you were helping us survive, but I guess goodbye. Oh well. And it did say that they were all living quite happily, so it all worked out. Oh goodness, did that... That's what that was supposed to look like. Okay, anyway. Now, we'll just do that. I see 0 trigger requests, and I am tempted to skip the trigger requests part and just go to the next very short story, which is Jack and the Beanstalk isn't terribly short, but I could do that still. If you have an objection to Jack and the Beanstalk instead of triggers right now, you better put it in, because I'm going to just read. No one seems to have anything to say yet. Well... All right, I'm going to read, if you have an issue with it. Something to say, eh? Indeed. Do you have something to say? Do you challenge me on Jack and the Beanstalk? Do you have a trigger preference? Hinga-dinga-darkin? I don't have a story called Hinga-dinga-darkin. Anyway. What did I do? Yes, I was wondering if I should just only do the triggers between stories when someone requests it. Forces you to be more chatty in the chat. I like that. Good. Thank you, little dragon. Okay. Then, Jack and the Beanstalk. I will continue and jabber less. Okay. A long, long time ago, when most of the world was young, and folk did what they liked because all things were good, there lived a boy called Jack. His father was bedridden, and his mother, a good soul, was busy early morns and late eves, planning and placing how to support her sick husband and her young son by selling the milk and butter which Milky White, the beautiful cow, gave them without stint. For it was summertime, but winter came on. The herbs of the fields took refuge from the frosts in the warm earth, and though his mother sent Jack to gather what fodder he could get in the hedgerows, he came back as often as not with a very empty sack. For Jack's eyes were so often full of wonder at all the things he saw that sometimes he forgot to work. So it came to pass that one morning Milky White gave no milk at all, not one drain. Then the good, hard-working mother threw her apron over her head and sobbed, "What shall we do? What shall we do?" Now Jack loved his mother. Besides, he felt just a bit sneaky at being such a big boy and doing so little to help. So he said, cheer up, I'll go and get work somewhere." And he felt as he spoke as if he would work his fingers to the bone. But the good woman shook her head mournfully. "You've tried that, Jack," she said, "and nobody would keep you. You are quite a good lad, but your wits go a wool gathering. No, you must sell Milky White and live on the money. It is no use crying over milk that is not here to even spill." You see, she was as wise as well as hard-working woman, and Jack's spirits rose. "Just so," he cried. "We will sell Milky White and be richer than ever. It's an ill wind that blows no one good. So as it is market day, I'll just take her there, and we shall see what we shall see." "But," began his mother. "But doesn't butter parsnips," laughed Jack. "Trust me to make a good bargain. But doesn't butter parsnips." Locking that away, okay. So, as it was washing day, and her sick husband was more ailing than usual, his mother let Jack off to sell the cow. "Not less than 10 pounds, she bawled after him as he turned the corner. 10 pounds indeed. Jack has made his mind up to 20. 20 solid golden sovereigns. He was just settling what he should buy his mother as a faring out of the money when he saw a queer little old man on the road who called out, "Good morning, Jack." "Good morning," replied Jack with a polite bow, wondering how the little queer old man happened to know his name, though, to be sure, Jack's were as plentiful as blackberries. "And where may you be going?" asked the queer little old man. Jack wondered again. He was always wondering, you know, what the queer little old man had to do with it. But, being always polite, he replied, "I am going to market to sell Milky White, and I mean to make a good bargain." So you will, chuckled the queer little old man. "You look the sort of chap for it. I bet you know how many beans make 5. 2 in each hand and 1 in my mouth," answered Jack readily. He really was as sharp as a needle. Just so, chuckled the queer little old man, and as he spoke he drew out of his pocket 5 beans. "Well, here they are. So give us Milky White." Jack was so flabbergasted that he stood with his mouth open as if he expected the 5th bean to fly into it. "What?" he said at last. "My Milky White for 5 common beans? Not if I know it." "But they aren't common beans," put in the queer little old man, and there was a queer little smile on his queer little face. "If you plant these beans overnight, by morning they will have grown up right into the very sky." Jack was too flabbergasted this time to even open his mouth. His eyes opened instead. "Did you say right into the very sky?" he asked at last. For see, Jack had wondered more about the sky than anything else. "Right up into the very sky," repeated the queer old man, with a nod between each word. "Right up into the very sky," with the claps emoji between them. "It's a good bargain, Jack, and as fair plays a jewel. If they don't, why, meet me here tomorrow morning, and you shall have Milky White back again. Will that please you?" "Right as a trivet," cried Jack, without stopping to think, and the next moment he found himself standing on an empty road. 2 in each hand and 1 in my mouth," repeated Jack. "That is what I said, and what I'll do. Everything in order, and if what that and if what the queer little old man said isn't true, I shall get Milky White back tomorrow morning." So whistling and munching the bean, he trudged home cheerfully, wondering what the sky would be like if he ever got there. "What a long time you've been," exclaimed his mother, who was watching anxiously for him at the gate. "It is past sunsetting, but I see you have sold Milky White. Tell me how much you got for her." "You'll never guess," began Jack. "Laws of mercy, you don't say so," interrupted the good woman. "And I worrying all day, lest they should take you in. What was it, 10 pounds? 15? Sure, it can't be 20. Jack held out the beans triumphantly. "There," he said, "that's what I got for her, and a jolly good bargain, too." It was his mother's turn to be flabbergasted, but all she said was, "What, them beans?" "Yes," replied Jack, beginning to doubt his own wisdom, but they're magic beans. If you plant them overnight, by morning they grow right up into the sky. Oh, please don't hit so hard." For Jack's mother, for once, had lost her temper and was belaboring the boy for all she was worth. And when she had finished scolding and beating, she flung the miserable beans out of the window and sent him supperless to bed. If this was the magical effect of the beans, thought Jack ruefully, he didn't want any more magic, if you please. However, being healthy and, as a rule, happy, he soon fell asleep and slept like a top. There are certainly new ways to interpret that sentence. I don't know what the original ways would be. Okay. When he woke, he thought at first it was moonlight, for everything in the room shone greenish. Then he stared at the little window. It was covered as if by a curtain of leaves. He was out of bed in a trice, and the next moment, without waiting to dress, was climbing up the biggest beanstalk you ever saw. For what the queer little old man had said was true. One of the beans which his mother had chucked into the garden had found soil, taken root, and grew in the night. Where? Up to the very sky? Jack meant to see, at any rate. So he climbed, and he climbed, and he climbed. It was easy work, for the big beanstalk with the leaves growing out of each side was like a ladder. For all that he soon out of breath. When he got his second wind, and was just beginning to wonder if he had a third, he saw in front of him a wide, shining white road stretching away and away and away. So he took to walking, and he walked and walked and walked, till he came to a tall, shining white house with a wide, white doorstep. And on the doorstep stood a great big woman with a black porridge pot in her hand. Now Jack, having had no supper, was hungry as a hunter, and when he saw the porridge pot, he said quite politely, "Good morning, 'm." I guess that's supposed to say like ma'am. "I wonder if you could give me some breakfast?" "Breakfast," echoed the woman, who in truth was an ogre's wife. "If it is breakfast you're wanting, it's breakfast you'll likely be, for I expect my man home every instant, and there is nothing he likes better for breakfast than a fat boy grilled on toast." Now Jack was not a bit of a coward, and when he wanted a thing he generally got it, so he said, cheerful like, "I'd be fatter if I'd had my breakfast." Whereat the ogre's wife laughed and bade Jack come in, for she was not really half as bad as she looked. But he had hardly finished the great bowl of porridge and milk she gave him, when the whole house began to tremble and quake. It was the ogre coming home. Thump, thump, thump. "Into the oven with you, sharp," cried the ogre's wife, and the iron oven door was just closed when the ogre strode in. Jack could see him through the little peephole slide at the top where the steam came out. He was a big one for sure. He had 3 sheep strung to his belt, and these he threw down on the table. "Here, wife," he cried, "roast me these snippets for breakfast. They are all I've been able to get this morning. Worse luck. I hope the oven's hot." And he went to touch the handle, while Jack burst out all of a sweat, wondering what would happen next. "Roast," echoed the ogre's wife. "Pooh, the little things would dry to cinders. Better boil them." So she set to work to boil them, but the ogre began sniffing about the room. "They don't smell mutton meat," he growled. Then he frowned horribly and began the real ogre's rhyme. "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Don't be silly," said the wife. "It's the bones of the little boy you had for supper that I'm boiling down for soup. Come eat your breakfast. There's a good ogre." So the ogre ate his 3 sheep, and when he had done, he went to a big oaken chest and took out 3 bags of golden pieces. These he put on the table and began to count their contents, while his wife cleared away the breakfast things. And by his head began to nod, and at last he began to snore, and snored so loud that the whole house shook. Oh. Then Jack nipped out of the oven, and seizing one of the bags of gold, crept away, and ran along the straight, wide, shining white road as fast as his legs would carry him, till he came to the beanstalk. He couldn't climb down it with the bag of gold. It was so heavy. So he just flung his burden down first, and helter-skelter climbed after it. And when he came to the bottom, there was his mother picking up gold pieces out of the garden as fast as she could, for of course the bag had burst. "Laws a mercy me," she says. "Wherever have you been? See, it's been raining gold." "No, it hasn't," began Jack. "I climbed up." Then he turned to look for the beanstalk, but lo and behold, it wasn't there at all. So he knew then it was all real magic. After that, they lived happily on the gold pieces for a long time, and the bedridden father got all sorts of nice things to eat. But at last, a day came when Jack's mother showed a doleful face as she put out a big yellow sovereign into Jack's hand and bade him be careful marketing, because there was not one more in the coffer. After that, they must starve. That night, Jack went supperless to bed of his own accord. If he couldn't make money, he thought, at any rate, he could eat less money. It was a shame for a big boy to stuff himself and bring no grist to the mill. He slept like a top, as boys do when they don't overeat themselves, and when he woke, "Oh, I think we should name him Rumpelstiltskin." There you go. Yeah, name the oratorio of Rumpelstiltskin. Rumpelstiltskin the lady. He slept like a top. Again, I'm not sure what that meant then, but what are we supposed to make of it? As boys do when they don't eat themselves. And when he woke, hey, presto! It actually says, hey, presto! The whole room showed greenish, and there was a curtain of leaves over the window. Another bean had grown in the night, and Jack was up it like a lamplighter before you could say knife. What does that mean? To be up like a lamplighter before you could say knife. I know lamplighters, they have to get up early, light the lamps, but what the heck does the knife have to do with it? What? Were people threatening lamplighters? Were lamplighters threatening people? These things you find. Anyway, this time he didn't take nearly so long climbing until he reached the straight, wide, white road, and in a trice he found himself. Actually, if you haven't named it Rumpelstiltskin, name it Presto. Hey, Presto. Yeah, that's the name. Tell me what you actually decide in the end, though. All right. He went up and he saw the road, and in a trice he found himself before the tall white house, where on the wide white steps the ogre's wife was standing with the black porridge pot in her hand. And this time Jack was bold as brass. "Good morning, ma'am," he said. "I've come to ask you for breakfast, for I had no supper, and I'm as hungry as a hunter." "Go away, bad boy," replied the ogre's wife. "Last time I gave a boy breakfast, my man missed a whole bag of gold. I believe you are the same boy." "Maybe I am, maybe I'm not," said Jack with a laugh. "I'll tell you true when I've had my breakfast, but not till then." So the ogre's wife, who was dreadfully curious, gave him a big bowl of porridge, but before he had half finished it, he heard the ogre coming. Thump, thump, thump. "In with you to the oven," shrieked the ogre's wife. "You shall tell me when he has gone to sleep." This time Jack saw through the steam peephole that the ogre had 3 fat calves strung to his belt. "Better luck today, wife," he cried, and his voice shook the house. "Quick, roast these trifles for my breakfast. I hope the oven's hot." And he went to feel the handle of the door, but his wife cried out sharply, "Roast? Why, you'd have to wait hours before they were done. I'll broil them. See how bright the fire is?" "Ugh," growled the ogre. And then he began sniffing and calling out, "Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." "Twaddle," said the ogre's wife. "It's only the bones of the boy you had last week that I've put into the pig bucket." "Ugh," said the ogre harshly. But he ate the broiled calves, and then he said to his wife, "Bring me my hen that lays the magic eggs. I want to see gold." So the ogre's wife brought him a great big black hen with a shiny red comb. She plumped it down on the table and took away the breakfast things. Then the ogre said to the hen, "Lay," and it promptly laid, what do you think? A beautiful, shiny, yellow, golden egg. Why is this story so sarcastic? I like it. "None so dusty, Henny Penny," laughed the ogre. "I shan't have to beg as long as I've got you." Then he said, "Lay," once more, and lo and behold, there was another beautiful, shiny, yellow, golden egg. Jack could hardly believe his eyes, and made up his mind that he would have that hen come what might. So when the ogre began to doze, he just out like a flash from the oven, seized the hen, and ran for his life. But you see, he reckoned without his prize. For hens, you know, always cackle when they leave their nests after laying an egg, and this one set up such a scrawling that it woke the ogre. "Where's my hen?" he shouted, and his wife came rushing in, and they both rushed to the door, but Jack had got the better of them by a good start, and all they could see was a little figure right away down the middle of the white road, holding a big, scrawling, cackling, fluttering black hen by the legs. How Jack got down the beanstalk he never knew. It was all wings and leaves and feathers and cacklings, but get down he did, and there was his mother, wondering if the sky was going to fall. But the very moment Jack touched the ground, he called out, "Lay!" and the black hen ceased cackling and laid a great big, shiny, yellow, golden egg. So everyone was satisfied, and from that moment everybody had everything that money could buy, for whenever they wanted anything, they just said, "Lay," and the black hen provided them with gold. But Jack began to wonder if he couldn't find something else besides money in the sky. So one fine moonlit midsummer night, he refused his supper, and before he went to bed, he stole out to the garden with a big watering can and watered the ground under his window, for, thought he, there must be 2 more beans somewhere. Perhaps it is too dry for them to grow. Then he slept like a top. Okay. And lo and behold, when he awoke, there was the green light shimmering through his room, and there he was in an instant on the beanstalk, climbing, climbing, climbing for all he was worth. But this time he knew better than to ask for his breakfast, for the ogre's wife would would be sure to recognize him. So he just hid in some bushes beside the great white house till he saw her in the scullery. Then he slipped out and hid himself in the copper, for he knew she would be sure to look in the oven first thing. And by he heard thump, thump, thump. And peeping through a crack in the copper lid, he could see the ogre stalk in with 3 huge oxen strung at his belt. But this time, no sooner had the ogre got into the house than he began shouting, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Be he alive or be he dead, I'll grind his bones to make my bread." For see you, the copper lid didn't fit right tight like the oven door, and ogres have noses like a dog's for scent. "Well, I declare, so do I," exclaimed the ogre's wife. "It will be that horrid boy who stole the bag of gold and the hen. If so, he's hid in the oven." But when she opened the door, lo and behold, Jack wasn't there, only some joints of meat roasting and sizzling away. Then she laughed and said, "You and me be fools for sure. Why, it's the boy you caught last night as I was getting ready for your breakfast. Yes, we be fools to take dead meat for live flesh. So eat your breakfast, there's a good ogre." But the ogre, though he enjoyed roast boy very much, wasn't satisfied. Every now and then he would burst out with "Fee, fi, fo, fum," and get up and search the cupboards, keeping Jack in a fever of fear lest he should think of the copper. But he didn't, and when he had finished his breakfast he called out to his wife, "Bring me my magic harp, I want to be amused." So she brought out a little harp and put it on the table, and the ogre leant back in his chair and said lazily, "Sing," and lo and behold, the harp began to sing. If you want to know what it sang about, why, it sang about everything, and it sang so beautifully that Jack forgot to be frightened, and the ogre forgot to think of "Fee, fi, fo, fum," and fell asleep, and this bit is in all caps, did not snore. Then Jack stole out of the copper like a mouse, and crept hands and knees to the table, raised himself up ever so softly. Yeah, well, I guess as an ogre you eat a lot of it. I don't know. Jack stole out of the copper like a mouse and crept hands and knees to the table, raised himself up ever so softly, and laid hold of the magic harp, for he was determined to have it. But no sooner had he touched it than it cried out quite loud, "Master, master!" So the ogre woke, saw Jack making off, and rushed after him. My goodness, it was a race. Jack was nimble. Jack was quick. Anyway, but the ogre's stride was twice as long. So, though Jack turned and twisted and doubled like a hare, yet at last, when he got to the beanstalk, the ogre was not a dozen yards behind him. There wasn't enough time to think, so Jack just flung himself onto the beanstalk and began to go down as fast as he could, while the harp kept yelling, "Master, master," at the very top of its voice. He had only gotten down about a quarter of the way when there was the most awful lurch you can think of, and Jack nearly fell off the beanstalk. It was the ogre beginning to climb down, and his weight made the stalk sway like a tree in a storm. Then Jack knew it was life or death, and he climbed down faster and faster, and as he climbed he shouted, "Mother, mother, bring an axe, bring an axe!" Now his mother, as luck would have it, was in the backyard chopping wood. She ran out, thinking that this time the sky must have fallen. Just as that moment, Jack touched the ground, and he flung down the harp, which immediately began to sing all sorts of beautiful things, and he seized the axe and gave a great chop at the beanstalk, which shook and swayed and bent like barley before a breeze. "Have a care," shouted the ogre, clinging on as hard as he could, but Jack did have a care, and he dealt that beanstalk such a shrewd blow that the whole of it, ogre and all, came toppling down, and of course the ogre broke his crown, so that he died on the spot. After that everyone was quite happy, for they had gold to spare, and if the bedridden father was dull, Jack just brought out the harp and said, "Sing," and lo and behold, it sang about everything under the sun. So Jack ceased wondering so much and became quite a useful person. And the last bean still hasn't grown yet. It is still in the garden. I wonder if it will ever grow, and what little child will climb its beanstalk into the sky, and what will that child find? Goody me! I quite like the inserted personal angle for that last one. There were sarcastic moments. There was the straight to the sky. And that is fun. Jack and the Beanstalk, they did good. Alright. I am going to take a short break, and then the next story would be Goldilocks and the Bears. So, Goldilocks and the Bears is next, or whatever triggers you would call for. But for right this moment, I'm just going to take a minute, rehydrate, and if Death Noah is still with us, double check about whoever came knocking at the door and disappeared. That mystery still has yet to be solved. I'm going to double check on it. Hi, yes, you! But I'll be right back, so put your triggers in, or say next story. It'll be Goldilocks and the Bears. I hope it's not a murderous Psyduck, but we'll see. I do have my knives, and they have been sharpened. I can bring them to the door if needed. Alright, be right back. Alright, I will move on to knife sharpening then. Very, fitting. It was all safe though. Still no traces, no clues. And that's the knives sharpened. I have a bread knife that I keep with the other knives, but I don't think I would sharpen it the same way. I don't know. I should check. I don't know bread knife care. I don't even usually use the bread knife. Anyway. Thank you for the welcome back. Let's have more triggers. We took a break from triggers. I should think sticks. You liked the bread knife? I guess I felt too much like I wanted the weight of the biggest knife. And that was more fun. The bread knife was nice, but the big knife. Yes. Okay. Sticks. Sticks. Yes, sometimes the serrated knives, they're just good at what they do. Good knives, they can be hard to come by. Alright. I think a bit of humming and then back to stories. will be Goldilocks and the bears. This time they don't specify the quantity of bears, just that there are indeed bears. Alright. Once upon a time, there were 3 bears. Okay, so they do qualify. There were 3 bears who lived together in a house of their own in a wood. One of them was a little wee bear, and one was a middle-sized bear, and the other was a great big bear. Goldilocks and the undefined number of bears. Yeah. They had each a bowl for their porridge, a little bowl for the little wee bear, and a middle-sized bowl for the middle-sized bear, and a great big bowl for the great big bear. And they had each a chair to sit in, a little chair for the little wee bear, a middle-sized chair for the middle-sized bear, and a great chair for the great big bear. And they had each a bed to sleep in. I think we see where this is going. A little bed for the little wee bear, and a middle-sized bed for the middle-sized bear, and a great bed for the great big bear. One day, after they had made the porridge for their breakfast and poured it into their porridge bowls, they walked out into the wood while the porridge was cooling, that they may not burn their mouths, by beginning too soon, for they were polite, well brought up bears. And while they were away, a little girl called Goldilocks, who lived at the other side of the wood, had been sent on an errand by her mother. She passed by the house and looked in at the window, and then she peeped in at the keyhole, for she was not at all a well-brought-up little girl. Then, seeing nobody in the house, she lifted the latch. The door was not fastened, because the bears were good bears, who did nobody any harm, and never suspected that anybody would harm them. So Goldilocks opened the door and went in, and well pleased was she when she saw the porridge on the table. If she had been a well-brought-up little girl, she would have waited till the bears came home, and then perhaps they would have asked her to breakfast, for they were good bears, a little rough or so, as the manner of bears is, but for all that very good-natured and hospitable. But she was impudent. She was an impudent, rude little girl, and so she set about helping herself. Goldilocks Smith. Yeah, well, it sounds like she didn't have to be, because the bears were very trusting bears that lived in a neighborhood that did not lock their doors, I guess, essentially. First, she tasted the porridge of the great big bear, and that was too hot for her. Next, she tasted the porridge of the middle-sized bear, but that was too cold for her. And then she went to the porridge of the little wee bear and tasted it, and that was neither too hot nor too cold, but just right, and she liked it so well that she ate it all up, every bit. Then Goldilocks, who was tired, for she had been catching butterflies instead of running on her errand, sat down in the chair of the great big bear, but that was too hard for her. Then she sat down in the chair of the middle-sized bear, and that was too soft for her. But when she sat down in the chair of the little wee bear, that was neither too hard nor too soft, but just right. So she seated herself in it, and there she sat, till the bottom of the chair gave out, and down she came plump on the ground, and that made her very cross, for she was a bad-tempered little girl. Now, being determined to rest, Goldilocks went upstairs into the bedchamber in which the 3 bears slept. And first she lay down upon the bed of the great big bear, but that was too high at the head for her. And next she lay down upon the bed of the middle-sized bear, and that was too high at the foot for her. and when she lay down upon the bed of the little wee bear, that was neither too high at the head nor at the foot, but just right, so she covered herself up comfortably and lay there till she fell fast asleep. By this time, the 3 bears thought their porridge would be cool enough for them to eat it properly, so they came home to breakfast. Now, careless Goldilocks had left the spoon of the great big bear standing in his porridge. "Somebody has been at my porridge," said the great big bear in his great, rough, gruff voice. Then the middle-sized bear looked at his porridge and saw the spoon was standing in it too. "Somebody has been in my porridge," said the middle-sized bear in his middle-sized voice. Then the little wee bear looked at his, and there was the spoon in the porridge bowl, but the porridge was all gone. "Somebody has been at my porridge and has eaten it all up," said the little wee bear in his little wee voice. Upon this, the 3 bears, seeing that someone had entered their house and had eaten up the little wee bear's breakfast, began to look about them. Now the careless Goldilocks had not put the cushion straight when she rose from the chair of the great big bear. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair," said the great big bear in his great, rough, gruff voice, and the careless Goldilocks had squatted down on the soft cushion of the middle-sized bear. "And somebody has been sitting in my chair," said the middle-sized bear in his middle-sized voice. "Somebody has been sitting in my chair and has sate the bottom through," said the little wee bear in his little wee voice. Then the 3 bears thought they had better make further search in case it was a burglar, so they went upstairs into their bedchamber. Now Goldilocks had pulled the pillow of the big bear out of its place. "Somebody has been lying in my bed," said the great big bear in his great, rough, gruff voice, and Goldilocks had pulled the bolster of the middle-sized bear out of its place. "Somebody has been lying in my bed," said the middle-sized bear in his middle-sized voice. But when the little wee bear came to look at his bed, there was the bolster in its place, and the pillow was in its place upon the bolster, and upon the pillow there was Goldilocks' yellow head, which was not in its place, for she had no business there. "Somebody's been lying in my bed, and here she is still," said the little wee bear in his little wee voice. Now Goldilocks had heard in her sleep the great, rough, gruff voice of the great big bear, but she was so fast asleep that no more to her than the roaring wind or the rumbling of thunder. And she had heard the middle-sized voice of the middle-sized bear, but it was only as if she had heard someone speaking in a dream. But when she heard the little wee voice of the little wee bear, it was so sharp and so shrill that it awakened her at once. Up she started, and when she saw the 3 bears on one side of the bed, she tumbled herself out of the other and ran to the window. Now the window was open, because the bears, like good tidy bears as they were, always opened their bedchamber window when they got up in the morning. So naughty, frightened little Goldilocks jumped, and whether she broke her neck in the fall, or ran into the wood and was lost there, or found her way out of the wood and got whipped up for being a bad girl and playing truant, no one can say. But the 3 bears never saw anything more of her. Well, that has a very vague ending. We don't know if she is dead, or lost in the woods, or got rightfully, beaten for being a bad kid. Who knows? I don't think I've ever heard of the very ambiguous ending to that one. Undefined number of bears and undefined ending of Goldilocks. Goldilocks and the Redacted. No, Mama. It was middle-sized bear. Just Mama Erasure. With a rod. Ah, yes, the sort of ominous chef sharpening way. With the rod. Vague and indeterminate and... Yes, you're right. Tetrahedron. You've got this. Caption all the rest of these stories. The end, indeed. It's a great big question mark on it. Probably. Yeah, okay. The next story will be the Juniper Tree, if we like that. What a cute little turtle. I like that one. You can give us closed captioning on the next ones or something. I will go to the Juniper Tree, unless somebody has a trigger request. I'll give you a moment while I type it out. But yes. All right. Yes, the Juniper Tree. Long, long ago, some 2,000 years or so, and considering this was written, 1876? 2,200. There lived a rich man with a good and beautiful wife. They loved each other dearly, but sorrowed much that they had no children. So greatly did they desire to have one, that the wife prayed for it day and night, but still they remained childless. In front of the house there was a court, in which grew a juniper tree. Hello? Dummed. I don't know how else to say that for now. From raid to raid to raid. Well, that's nice. I'm not being raided, am I? There's just the U. If I am, I'll brace myself. Oh no. Yes, I read stories. Currently reading The Juniper Tree, or just starting it. Ow. Oh, you want me to stop talking and just read? I will do. All right. You were here yesterday? Oh, good. Okay. Well, I'm glad you're back, and I will get back to reading. In front of the house was a juniper tree. One winter's day, the wife stood under the tree to peel some apples, and as she was peeling them, she cut her finger, and the blood fell on the snow. Ah, sighed the woman heavily, if I had but a child, as red as blood and as white as snow. Hey, wait a minute. That's exactly how Snow White starts. What the heck? And as she spoke the words, her heart grew light within her, and it seemed to her that her wish was granted, and she returned to the house, feeling glad and comforted. A month passed, and all the snow had disappeared. Then another month went by, and all the earth was green. Wow, you have a very fast seasonal change. So the months followed one after another, and the first trees budded in the woods, and soon the green branches grew thickly intertwined, and then the blossoms began to fall. Once again the wife stood under the juniper tree, and it was so full of sweet scent that her heart leaped for joy. She was so overcome with her happiness that she fell on her knees. Presently the fruit became round and firm, and she was glad and at peace. But when they were fully ripe, she picked the berries and ate eagerly of them. And then she grew sad and ill. A little while later, she called her husband and said to him, weeping, "If I die, bury me under the juniper tree." Then she felt comforted and happy again, and before another month passed, she had a little child. What is that, like 4 months? What? And when she saw that it was as white as snow and as red as blood, her joy was so great that she died. Her husband buried her under the juniper tree and wept bitterly for her. By degrees, however, his sorrow grew less, and although at times he still grieved over his loss, he was able to go about as usual, and later on he married again. He now had a little daughter born to him. The child of his first wife was a boy, who was as red as blood and as white as snow. The mother loved her daughter very much, and when she looked at her, and then looked at the boy, it pierced her heart to think that he would always stand in the way of her own child, and she was continually thinking how she could get the whole of the property for her. This evil thought took possession of her more and more, and made her behave very unkindly to the boy. She drove him from place to place with cuffings and buffetings, so that the poor child went about in fear, and had no peace from the time he left school to the time he went back. One day, the little daughter came running to her mother in the storeroom, and said, "Mother, give me an apple." "Yes, my child," said the wife, and she gave her a beautiful apple out of the chest. The chest had a very heavy lid, and a large iron lock. "Mother," said the little daughter again, "may not brother have one too?" The mother was very angry at this, but she answered, "Yes, when he comes out of school." Just then she looked out of the window and saw him coming, and it seemed as if an evil spirit entered into her, for she snatched the apple out of her little daughter's head and said, "You shall not have one before your brother." She threw the apple into the chest and shut it to. The little boy now came in, and the evil spirit in the wife made her say kindly to him, "My son, will you have an apple?" But she gave him a wicked look. "Mother," said the boy, "how dreadful you look." "Yes, give me an apple." The thought came to her that she would kill him. "Come with me," she said. She lifted up the lid of the chest. "Take one out for yourself." And as he bent over to do so, the evil spirit urged her, and crash, down went the lid, and off went the little boy's head. Then she was overwhelmed with fear at the thought of what she had done. "If only I can prevent anyone knowing that I did it," she thought. She went upstairs to her room, and took a white handkerchief out of the top drawer. Then she set the boy's head again on his shoulders, and bound it with the handkerchief, so that nothing could be seen, and placed him on a chair by the door, with an apple in his hand. Oh my God! Soon after this, little Marlene came up to her mother, who was stirring a pot of boiling water over the fire, and said, "Mother, brother is sitting by the door with an apple in his hand, and he looks so pale, and when I asked him to give me the apple, he did not answer, and that frightened me." "Go to him again," said her mother, "and if he does not answer, give him a box on the ear." So little Marlene went and said, "Brother, give me that apple." But he did not say a word. Then she gave him a box on the ear, and his head rolled off. She was so terrified at this that she ran crying and screaming to her mother. "Oh, she said, "I have knocked off my brother's head." And then she wept, and nothing would stop her. "What have you done?" said her mother. "But no one must know about it, so you must keep silence. What is done can't be undone. We will make him into puddings." And she took the little boy and cut him up, made him into puddings, and put him in the pot. But Marlene stood looking on, and wept, and her tears fell into the pot, so that there was no need of salt. Presently the father came home and sat down to his dinner, and asked, "Where is my son?" The mother said nothing, but gave him a large dish of black pudding, and Marlene still wept without ceasing. The father again asked, "Where is my son?" "Oh," said the wife, "he is gone into the country to his mother's great uncle. He's going to stay there some time." "What is he gone there for?" and he never even said goodbye to me. Well, he likes being there, and he told me he should be away quite 6 weeks. He is well looked after there. I feel very unhappy about it, said the husband, in case it should not be all right, and he ought to have said goodbye to me. With this, he went on with dinner, and said, Little Marlene, why do you weep? Brother will soon be back. Then he asked his wife for more pudding, oh my God, and as he ate, he threw the bones under the table. Little Marlene went upstairs and took her best silk handkerchief out of the bottom drawer, and in it she wrapped all the bones from under the table and carried them outside, and all the time she did nothing but weep. Then she laid them in the green grass under the juniper tree, and she had no sooner done so than all her sadness seemed to leave her, and she wept no more. And now the juniper tree began to move, and the branches waved. They waved backwards and forwards, first away from one another, then together again, as it might be someone clapping their hands for joy. After this, a mist came round the tree, and in the midst of it there was a burning as of a fire, and out of the fire there flew a beautiful bird that rose high into the air, singing magnificently, and when it could no more be seen, the juniper tree stood there as before, and the silk handkerchief and the bones were gone. Little Marlene now felt as light-hearted and happy as if her brother was still alive. She went back to the house and sat down cheerfully to the table and ate. The bird flew away and alighted on the house of a goldsmith and began to sing. My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that I might lie underneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. The goldsmith was in his workshop making a gold chain when he heard the song of the bird on his roof. He thought it so beautiful that he got up and ran out, and as he crossed the threshold, he lost one of his slippers. But he ran on into the middle of the street with a slipper on one foot and a sock on the other. He still had on his apron, and still held the gold chain and the pincers in his hands. And so he stood gazing up at the bird while the sun came shining brightly down on the street. Bird, he said, how beautifully you sing. Sing me that song again. Nay, said the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. Give me that gold chain, and I will sing it you again. Here is the chain, take it, said the goldsmith. Only sing me that again. The bird flew down, took the gold chain in his right claw, and then alighted again in front of the goldsmith and sang, My mother killed her little son, my father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all, she laid her kerchief over me, took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then he flew away and settled on the roof of a shoemaker's house, and sang, My mother killed her little son, my father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all, she laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. The shoemaker heard him. He jumped up and ran out in his shirt sleeves, and stood looking up at the bird on the roof, with his hand over his eyes to keep himself from being blinded by the sun. Bird, he said, how beautifully you sing. Then he called through the door to his wife, Wife, come out, here is a bird. Come and look at it, and hear how beautifully it sings. Then he called his daughter and the children, then the apprentices, girls and boys, and they all ran up the street to look at the bird, and saw how splendid it was with its red and green feathers, and its neck like burnished gold, and eyes like 2 bright stars in its head. Bird, said the shoemaker, sing me that song again. Nay, answered the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. You must give me something. Wife, said the man, go into the garret. On the upper shelf you will see a pair of red shoes. Bring them to me. The wife went in and fetched the shoes. There, bird, said the shoemaker, now sing me that song again. The bird flew down and took the red shoes in his left claw. Then he went back to the roof and sang, My mother killed her little son, my father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me, and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. When he had finished, he flew away. He had the chain in his right claw and the shoes in the left, and he flew right away to a mill, and the mill went click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. Inside the mill were 20 of the miller's men hewing a stone, and as they went hick-hack, 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 the mill went click-clack, click-clack, click-clack. The bird settled on a lime tree in front of the mill and sang, My mother killed her little son, then one of the men left off. My father grieved when I was gone. 2 more men left off and listened. I'll start that over. He settled on the lime tree in front of the mill and sang, My mother killed her little son. Then one of the men left off. My father grieved when I was gone. 2 more men left off and listened. My sister loved me best of all. Then 4 more left off. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie. Now there were only 8 at work, underneath, and now only 5, the juniper tree, and now only 1. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. Then he looked up, and the last one had left off work. Bird, he said, what a beautiful song that it is you sing. Let me hear it too. Sing it again. Nay, answered the bird, I do not sing twice for nothing. Give me that millstone, and I will sing it again. If it belonged to me alone, you should have it. Yes, yes, said the others. If he will sing again, he can have it. The bird came down, and all the 20 millers set to and lifted up the stone with a beam. Then the bird put out his head through the hole and took the stone round his neck like a collar, flew back with it to the tree and sang. Thank you. My mother killed her little son. My father grieved when I was gone. My sister loved me best of all. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. And when he had finished his song, he spread his wings, with the chain in his right claw and the shoes in his left, and the millstone round his neck. He flew right away to his father's house. The father, the mother, and the little Marlene were having their dinner, which, pretty sure is the rest of the little boy, isn't it? Oh my gosh. How light-hearted I feel, said the father, so pleased and cheerful. And I, said the mother, I feel so uneasy, as if a heavy thunderstorm were coming. But little Marlene sat and wept and wept. Then the bird came flying towards the house and settled on the roof. I do feel so happy, said the father, and how beautifully the sun shines. I feel just as if I were going to see an old friend again. Ah, said the wife, but I am so full of distress and uneasiness that my teeth chatter, and I feel as if there were a fire in my veins. And she tore open her dress, and all the while little Marlene sat in the corner and wept, and the plate on her knees was set with her tears. The bird now flew to the juniper tree and began singing. My mother killed her little son. The mother shut her eyes and her ears that she might see and hear nothing, but there was a roaring sound in her ears like that of a violent storm, and in her eyes a burning and flashing like lightning. My father grieved when I was gone. Look, mother, said the man, at the beautiful bird that is singing so magnificently, and how warm and bright the sun is, and what a delicious scent of spice is in the air. My sister loved me best of all. Then little Marlene laid her head down on her knees and sobbed. I must go outside and see the bird nearer, said the man. Ah, do not go, cried the wife. I feel as if the whole house were in flames. But the man went out and looked at the bird. She laid her kerchief over me and took my bones that they might lie underneath the juniper tree. Quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. With that the bird let fall the gold chain, and it fell just round the man's neck so that it fitted him perfectly. He went inside and said, See, what a splendid bird that is. He has given me this beautiful gold chain, and looks so beautiful himself. But the wife was in such fear and trouble that she fell on the floor, and her cap fell from her head. Then the bird began again. My mother killed her little son. Ah me, cried the wife, if I were but 1,000 feet beneath the earth that I might hear not that song. My father grieved when I was gone, and the woman fell down again as if dead. My sister loved me best of all. Well, said little Marlene, I will go out too and see if the bird will give me anything. She went out. She laid her handkerchief over me and took my bones that I might lie, and he threw down the shoes to her. Underneath the juniper tree, quit, quit, what a beautiful bird am I. And she now felt quite happy and light-hearted. She put on the shoes and danced and jumped about in them. I was so miserable, she said, when I came out, but that has all passed away. That is indeed a splendid bird. He has given me a pair of red shoes. The wife sprang up with her hair standing out from her head like flames of fire. Then I will go out too, she said, and see if it will lighten my misery, for I feel as if the world were coming to an end. But as she crossed the threshold, crash! The bird threw the millstone down on her head, and she was crushed to death. The father and little Marlene heard the sound and ran out, but they only saw the mist and flame and fire rising from the spot. When these had passed, there stood the little brother, and he took the father and little Marlene by the hand. Then they all three rejoiced and went inside together and sat down to their dinners and ate. The end. The plot hole being that the dinner was the little boy. So, wow. Unless the father was the one that ate all of the meat, and the daughter and the wife never got any of the meat, and they ate something else in the dinner. But, yeah. Wow. Not what I was expecting for a story called The Juniper Tree. Okay. Well, it was pretty grim. Oh my gosh. I want to end my stream. Yeah, I definitely haven't heard of it either. And I don't know if I love it, but it's not bad. I don't hate it, that's for sure. Oh yeah, the ogre. But I do end my stream roughly at 8 or 8:30, and I'm going to end at 8 today. I'll be back later, so you can join me later tonight. Oh yeah, well, you don't have to. A grim story. I don't think it was. I'll check. This is Jacob and Wilhelm Grimm. No, it was. You're right. It was a grim story. Thank you guys for sitting in on the stream. I'll be back tonight, and I'll be uploading videos to my YouTube so that they don't disappear. So we can listen to this again. And I could probably be reading the same stories all over again. I think I'll end up reading one that I liked from my last stream, because it was just very good. But alright. Bye for now, everyone. Hopefully I'll see you soon.